Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. It's 5 o'clock, and I call this workshop of the Victoria City Council to order. We just have one item on our agenda this evening, so with that, let's dive right into our agenda. We're going to kick it off with Assistant City Manager Trish Pollock. Ms. Pollock, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. This evening, we are on our second budget topic of fees and charges for services, cost efficiencies, cost savings and operational efficiencies. Our agenda this evening, you'll hear from each department head a brief overview of their departments, how they work, what work they're doing each day fits into the bigger picture of the mission of the city. And while you hear firsthand on some of the budget pressures departments face in delivering quality services to our residents, you also hear firsthand the amazing work that these individuals and their teams do every day in identifying ways to streamline operations, automate processes, and find opportunities for cost savings. So we truly live a culture of continuous improvement. And in addition, we'll also be discussing the fees and charges for services and review the proposed changes for the 2023 budget year. So strategies shared across all departments include seeking partnerships. Some examples of those partnerships would be mutual aid agreements, cooperative purchasing agreements, our partnership with the school district for the rec center, and sharing resources for services and equipment. Examples including our GIS position that's shared by 4 other cities, our with the county, our prosecution services, and our street sweeper that we also share with the county and another city. We research and apply for grants. Most recent grant would be for the water fill stations at the rec center. We're working on a grant to replace the toilets at the parks for water conservation, and then also the county and our composting grants. Our approach with multi-year budgeting allows us to plan for future expenses and jump on opportunities strategically to leverage future cost savings and to drive down future year levies. And with that, I'm going to give the floor to Chief Hager, who will kick off our department presentations.
Chief, good morning. Good afternoon. Oh, it's almost evening. Evening now. I missed the whole day.
Morning.
It looks like missed the whole day. I'm sorry about that.
No problem. Well, good evening, Mayor.
Get me out of this.
I'll go quick. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. So tonight I'm here to speak a little bit about the Department of Public Safety, which includes the fire department, a future community service officer program, and then also the building department is rolled into that. So I'll briefly touch on a little bit of the highlights for each of those, but the fire department is comprised of 31 paid on-call firefighters who provide basic life support for EMS functions, fire suppression, hazardous materials, rescue operations, and public education and fire prevention to the community. Again, with that community service officer program, that's something we're eyeing for the 2023 budget, but we would take some of the low-level type non-criminal calls off the burden of the contract that exists today and handle those in-house with our own staff. And then again, effective June 1st, the building department was moved under the public safety department. So the building department is our building inspectors and official and permitting. That's all done as part of new construction. So again, how we serve the community, we provide for the safety of our residents through these multiple outlets. So whether it's code enforcement, fire prevention, response, those types of things. And that response side is mitigating hazards and emergencies within the community. Our budget pressures, growth is a significant pressure on our budget, and will continue to be. So a good example of that is we normally see about a 3% increase in our call volume annually. 2021, for some odd reason, was a 34% increase in 1 year. So that places a strain on the operations of the department, especially when we're relying on a staffing model that can, it's 200 years old in some situations. We're relying on paid on-call staff or volunteer firefighters to fulfill that role. So that increase in demand for their time places a strain on the operations. This year's call volume is slightly below that, but we're tracking probably pretty close to last year's numbers. So we're not going to see that 3% increase every year. It's going to continue to tick upward significantly higher.
Chief, can you go ahead? Can you tell us can you pinpoint what those increased calls are for, or tell us a little bit more about them, how all of a sudden we went from 3 to 34?
That's a great question. A lot of last year's, there wasn't like one consistent item that stuck out. So call volume wise, across like all of our categories, we were up. But I think one of the biggest areas we were up in was emergency medical services. So those EMS responses to the needs of the community. And we do see an increase in those types of calls when we start bringing facilities into town that place additional demand on those services. So anytime we start looking at care facilities or facilities that have maybe some more senior housing or anything like that, we will see an uptick in that. So as the city continues to grow and we see more of those types of facilities, we can expect that those will place a demand on us as well. The other one that kind of comes along with growth that we see is anytime there's work going on in the earth, as far as development goes, it's bound that somebody's going to hit a gas line or a power line or something like that and create a hazard. I think we've been to 3 in one neighborhood already this year where they've struck gas lines and kind of part of the construction process. So,
Councilmember Black, yeah.
Aren't they supposed to mark that so they don't do that?
They do mark it, but unfortunately, accidents still happen. And
3 times in the same development?
yes, yep.
Maybe have a talk with them.
Aim a little more carefully.
The gas company will
All right, very
have a
good.
chat with them. So,
All right. Did your Councilmember Aberg?
No, you stole my
Okay,
question.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
You're welcome. All right, go ahead.
and I think the last piece of that is people were kind of cooped up for 2 years with COVID, and as people got out and got more active in the outdoors, we saw significant demand for calls for service in the Park District last year as well as part of that. So the next kind of pressure on our budget is just equipment and supplies. So last year, about a year ago, I was in and we spoke, and we council authorized the order of a fire truck, a new fire engine at that time. When we did that, costs on that were up 280% just in raw materials alone. Not only are we seeing the cost of materials increase on those, but now we're also seeing the time delay on that. So that original contract was 330 days, so about 11 months. That's been pushed off to almost 2 years now. So we won't see that truck probably this time next year. So we're seeing that bottleneck in the equipment and supplies. Another example of those are turnout gear that we wear. So our helmets, jackets, boots, pants. That has a mandatory 10-year retirement age. So the gear hits 10 years, it's got to get retired per the standards that are out there. Last year we saw a 52% increase just in the cost of that. So we're upwards of $3,200 a set. So take 31 firefighters and they each have 2 sets. So it gets rather expensive really quick.
Do you do that on a, what's my word, tiered basis so that it doesn't happen that we're changing all 31 sets at in 1 year?
Yep, so we just ordered like 6 sets that arrived last week, and so yeah, they're structured.
You rotate it.
Rotated through the budget annually.
That's
so
the fancy word I was looking for.
not a big hit right all at once. So
I lose words too.
That's right. All right.
I had a question.
yeah,
On the newer trucks that are coming in, are we looking at electric?
we are not yet.
Are we thinking about it? I know some cities are doing it.
So we have a vehicle due for replacement next year. That's just a standard like SUV, and that we are looking at a hybrid on. I'm a little wary of the technology in the big trucks yet. I just don't know if it's, the first ones just rolled out earlier this year in the full-size fire engines.
Yeah, we can keep an eye on the cities that have done it, and they're looking at doing school buses as well, so.
Yeah, definitely. I think we're due for another engine replacement in about 9 years now. So
By then, oh my gosh,
by then they should have it.
we'll be flying.
They should have it figured out. And really, I think there's only one manufacturer right now that's really kind of dialed in on. I know the others are working on it, but there's only one out there, I think, that's got a product they're actually delivering at the moment as far as electric goes.
Okay.
So, but yes, next year we've got a SUV replacement. A hybrid is definitely something we're looking at and
Okay, that's
checking.
awesome. Okay.
And then infrastructure is our next big pressure on the budget. So as council's aware, we're working through land acquisition right now for a future fire station with build slated for 2025 or approximately there. So that is going to be a significant pressure on the budget, along with the land acquisition this year, but then also construction costs when we get into the build in a couple of years. And conference Dana and I attended earlier this year, there was material costs that are 30 to 50% up in just a year. So hopefully we see some of that start to level off, but that will definitely place a significant demand on the budget as well. So. And then cost savings and operational efficiencies. So as Trish alluded to, grants are something we're constantly pursuing. Year to date in 2022, just in the fire department, we've brought in about 11,400 in grant funding. We have another grant that I'm just working on finalizing. We have an award letter for it, but we'll bring it to council for adoption here in the next couple of weeks. But it's a $45,000 grant that we received through the state of Minnesota. And those are all for equipment replacement or training costs. So we're able to offset many of those larger purchases through the grant process. Technology is another thing we're constantly pursuing, so any opportunity we have to leverage technology, whether it's electronic plan review, permitting for fire suppression permits, or in the building permits as well, we're going through that. And then also we're leveraging some tools for data analytics for our fire calls, so we can really hone in on where those hot spots in the community are, and this was something that we use to help guide where that future fire station sits, so we can see where the demands for service really come in and what those types of incidents are. And then we're also just leveraging purchasing power. So any opportunities we have to pursue joint powers agreements or cooperative purchasing ventures, the Turnout Gear that I alluded to earlier, that was all purchased off a cooperative purchasing venture that we're part of with like 32 other cities. So that group of cities gets together and negotiates a contract with predetermined pricing to help, bear some of those costs. That Turnout Gear, if we hadn't have purchased it off that contract, would have been probably, I think there was over 100% increase on it. So that helps ease the burden of some of those big expenditures a little bit, being part of those cooperative purchasing ventures. And then just to highlight the organization and our team. So again, the last year has been really taxing on our group. We've responded to several high-profile incidents that have really taxed our resources and our people mentally, physically. Just again, that high call volume is more of a demand on this group and this team. So I just want to recognize the work that they do every day in the community and how they all come together to serve on behalf of all of our citizens. So with that, I will take any questions.
All right, council, questions for Chief Hager? All right, seeing none, we have Ms. Grawl on deck, I think. So Chief, you're going to hang around just in case something pops up here?
I am, yes.
Perfect.
Good evening,
Kendra,
Mayor.
welcome.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Thank you for having me here today. As part of our department overview, our communications department has one full-time employee. And I cover everything from communications, community engagement, marketing, outreach, events, and design. But I'd like to thank everyone up here today for all of their work toward communications as well, and being champions and advocates of communications. And I don't think this department could work with all of them, so thank you. If we're looking at budget pressures for next year, obviously population increases that will affect our amounts, services, and channels needed. Cost increases, if we're looking at inflation and supply shortages, this year paper was a big one where it's hard to find and the cost has gone up significantly. And then as we do more, people want more, so those needs increase as well. In terms of cost savings and operational efficiencies, always searching for low-cost ways to make a big impact. One example is the streaming content on our PEG channel. That is a relatively low cost to have that dynamic content streaming on there. Another way is to discontinue redundant or low-impact activities. So taking a look at all of our activities or platforms and how are they serving us. So in certain cases, we're consolidating into one platform to meet those needs rather than using multiple platforms that might not be providing what already be providing what we could be doing with one. And then partnering with departments and community partners as well. And then a spotlight just on community engagement. We've already discussed the community survey. We had a fairly high response rate from POLCO and their general national citizen survey standards. And we will be sharing a lot of that information in upcoming content, which we're really excited about. Community feedback, we've been publishing polls and surveys on timely topics. And then we've been out and about at community engagement events this summer, and we've been taking a lot of video at them as well. So I'm really looking forward to pushing a lot of that video content on our social and website as well.
Kendra, can you tell us where you go with polls and surveys? Do you push those out on Facebook, or what do you do?
Yep. So on our social media channels as well as our website as well. And we have a notification method on our website that pushes it out through there too. And then we've been using POLCO, which is the system for the community survey. And it actually has a built-in audience that it has collected those members when they filled out the community survey, whether it was the scientific survey or the open survey or these other polls and surveys. They get notified that there is a new poll that is coming out. So that's if it's a general community feedback. If we have one that is more directed at a specific audience, then we would directly mail that to those.
Got it.
I'm a little confused on that. The POLCO I thought was just the one that we did every couple years.
Right, so POLCO is the company that provides the National Citizen Survey, so we will not be doing that next year. We do that on a 3 to 4 year cycle, but
Right.
POLCO has a platform where they actually do surveys. So the parks amenity poll that we did and the senior resources for recreational activities, those two were on POLCO. So when we pushed them out, people can get notified that had already filled out those other surveys that there's this new survey available.
So we have access to these platforms, and people have agreed to take these polls for us.
Mm-hmm.
Where is that on the web? I didn't get anything on that. I took a survey, so.
Yeah, so when we send out new ones, you should get notified through the system if you agreed to be contacted in the future for future surveys. We can take a look at that.
Okay.
Maybe you didn't check the box.
Maybe I didn't check the box. I'm gonna have to look, because I don't know. I like taking surveys, so.
You're the only one I know who likes to take a survey.
And we like
I
sending.
like those little quizzes too.
For you. All right.
And that is all I have.
Oh.
Any other questions?
Questions for Kendra?
Councilmember
Black.
The things that you consolidated, could you give us an example of that?
Yeah, so if we're looking at the website platform, we have, and then if we're looking at our strategic dashboard, one thing that we want to do is consolidate that strategic dashboard into the website. So we will be saving money, but we will also be reducing steps to get to that dashboard by integrating it within the website. So now you have to go to the website, click a button, and then go to the dashboard, and then there are buttons within that you can click into. Instead, by integrating it, we'll be reducing the cost and then reducing the steps taken to get to it.
Are there integration costs to set that up?
No, so it won't be an integration in the way that it will be embedded in the site. Instead, we'll be recreating that on the website.
Okay.
So it'll be more direct content.
Councilmember Roberts.
We have, you know, everything is now geared, right, technology, right, so social media and stuff, but we also have a large senior population. So have we thought about ways to better engage with those people who may not be on Facebook or Twitter or whatever?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think Alyssa has been a great resource as well with the Senior Resource Committee. So we did the poll for recreational activities geared towards seniors, but we could also do a communications one as well. We do always think of our different populations when we're pushing out new web pages or content as well. So that's why we always try to have the web page link, but then there's always a phone number usually on the web page as well. So people can easily contact us in different ways. It's not just, hey, we want you to email. There are other ways that you may feel comfortable with using.
Thank you.
Well, if they don't go on the web page, then they don't know.
Yeah, then they're probably counting on the newspaper or.
Yeah, they're using the newspaper or whatever.
All right. Other questions for Kendra? No. All right, Ms. Monkey, up next, it looks like. Park and Recreation Director, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and Council. This evening, just on my area, we're going to talk about parks and trails, recreation programs, and special events, and then the recreation center. The parks, currently we have 32 active and passive parks within the community, over 400 acres of park land. We have 34 miles of trail and 21 miles of sidewalk, I believe. We have also 45 community gardens located at the Recreation Center and also at Holy Family as part of that overall Parks and Trails program. The recreation programs and special events, we offer year-round recreation programs. Through this year, we have served, I think, about 355 different programs or classes and have served over 12,000 people just through today's date. So we do a lot of special events, and thanks to Kendra also for helping out with that. She does a great job with us, but concerts in the park, Public Works and Fire for the truck rodeo and splash pad, also the Lunchtime Tunes program. And then just this last week, we did a kids abracadabra program on Wednesday evening and saw about 300 people attend that event. So we're very active in the community. The Recreation Center, it's going to be hard to believe, but 20 years old this next year. So we're finally seeing numbers coming back after COVID, and the place is very busy. So we're very excited about that, and hopefully that will continue.
And can you tell us, are they at like pre-COVID numbers? Are they there yet, or are we exceeding those?
We're about there. As everything else ebbs and flows in the summertime, our membership drops off a little bit because people want to be outside. So as that fall and winter come, we'll jump back up, especially as pickleball comes back in, and then those members come back in for their fitness program. So we were really close last year, if not more so, above numbers than we were pre-COVID. So.
Thank you.
Budget pressures that, I think are really important as we continue to grow, again, as a community. We continue to add more parkland. and park facilities. And so as that occurs, maintenance costs continue to rise. Everything from picnic tables to garbage cans to trail work, all those things will age over time. And so those cost increases are going to happen, or facilities and parks will pay for that consequence by deferred maintenance on them. So it's really important to consider as we move forward. Again, new parks, trails, and amenities and growth. The recreation center is going to be 20 years old and will require maintenance just like any other facility that we have. One of the challenges too that we have seen, especially this year, is staffing. We use a lot of seasonal folks that run our recreation programs, work at the front desk. You know, we're seeing that competition from private and other public entities, you know, where they're paying a lot of money for bodies to come in. And so we need to be aware of that as we move forward with hiring and being able to support the programs that we run. You know, we continue to increase our recreation programs and special events on an annual basis to try to engage the community as new folks come into the community. One of the things we have been looking with, the Lions Pavilion has been a wonderful addition to the community. Just to this point, we have received over 750 requests for that facility to be used this year, and we have booked 250 reservations to date. And a lot of that's generated especially by the graduation folks. So at some of those Fridays and Saturdays into the next year, we're getting 10 to 20 reservation requests for those days. And we contact each and every one of those people to let them know yes or no that they don't have it. And a lot of times it's no on those busy weeks. So some of the cost savings and operation efficiencies that we have done. Grants is one of the things that we try to do. We recently got a Met Council grant for about $50,000. It's shared over a couple different programs, but replacing toilets and urinals in some of the park shelters and the rec center. We also work with Carver County on a SHIP grant. We have a bench replacement program that we utilize them for. And the last one that we received was about $4,100 for this year. We also work with our partners, Three Rivers, Carver County, Chaska, District 112, and the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District to provide different opportunities at an affordable cost. This year, with the help of Kendra and Alyssa, we created an online sponsorship and donation form, so it's easier for people to select us and give us money for recreation programs or concerts in the park. In addition, this year we really upped our volunteer, seeking out volunteers for park cleanup and beautification, and we have really increased the amount of volunteers this year to help with the park, whether it's a one-time park cleanup or multiple times. That has really helped.
How many do you have now?
I believe that over this year so far, probably about 15. That's, again, could be a one-time deal or somebody that has been dedicated to a certain park.
That's great.
And then the last time we, really try to work with different projects to add on as an alternate, and Bavaria Trail was one of those that we tagged on with a larger project with Kara, and hopes of seeing some cost reductions or at least some cost savings with that. One of the city and council goals was to, once Wasserman was completed, to really try to program that space So this year, Holly really worked hard on this program called Wonders of Wasserman, and we're calling it Wow Camp. It was a 4 Friday mornings throughout the summer for 3 hours that was geared to youth that, 1 week it was the reptiles, 1 week was outdoor sports, was pond and plant life, and then our last one was survivor skills. In this program, first year program, we had 65 participants and with people on the waiting list. So we're really excited to expand this program. We may look at mini WOWs next year or increasing the number of programs that we have within this. So it's really a nice program that came together with the help of Carver County Parks Department too. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, council, questions?
I have a question. Can you go back to that graph that shows that one? So this is probably isn't a popular decision, or question, but it's the cost of doing business is just simply more than it was yesterday, right? Are we increasing our rates to for the programs that we charge in line with inflation?
It depends on what program, I guess you're asking about. So like our recreation programs, we really try to provide those at a break-even cost. So with park programs, we really don't have a lot that utilize necessarily the specific parks, except for like shelter reservations, and we have that cost cover whatever administrative cleaning and public works staff time, if there is any. So that type of
So the cost to maintain those facilities have gone up, and so we're passing that
yes,
cost along.
yes. But overall, when you look at 400 acres of parkland, whether that's passive or active, it has to get mowed. We provide garbage cans, we provide picnic tables, shelters. That they're more of neighborhood park systems, they're playgrounds, and I don't know how you charge for those if you don't have any specific programs, geared towards them, so.
That's paid for in our taxes.
How do we? You don't have to have an answer, but just a question. As I look at this chart, right? It's kind of scary, right? If we're looking out even 10 years from now.
I would agree.
All right.
Can you remind me? I know we've talked about it earlier. We have the partnership with Chanhassen for the ice rinks. When does that end? With our contract with them, and will that affect?
Yeah,
With the school?
Yes.
yeah, we have an agreement with District 112.
Yep.
And that agreement goes through 2033.
Okay.
So we have another 10 years with that agreement.
Do we have a separate agreement with Holy Family?
We do not. With that agreement with Holy Family went with the rink.
What do you mean?
So we had ice time. The city had an agreement with that ice time with Holy Family, but that agreement, when the school district took over the ice arenas, that agreement went to the school district.
Got it. So,
But there was language written in that protected them with the number of hours that they got in home ice, so that was all written into that agreement.
so District 112 manages that contract?
Yes.
Got it. All right, council, other questions?
Would we ever review that contract or change the terms before its due date? You said it was 2033? It's pretty favorable for us, isn't it?
Yes, it's a good contract.
Right, I know, but right, we're taking advantage isn't the right term, but we're working with one of our community partners in an agreement that's not could be more mutually beneficial. And I'm worried that at some point in time, it's been so long when it comes due, right? What's the impact if we lose them?
But it's gonna be higher cost, isn't it? I mean, they'd have to build their own rink, or they're gonna have to partner with someone else, so, I mean, it was negotiated, so.
And thank you, Mayor, members of the council, just in terms of the budget, and Tricia can jump in here too as she, if she feels comfortable doing so. But right now, under the current agreement in your financial plan, based on the current agreement that we have in place, your financial plan for your long-term maintenance, deferred maintenance, and operations of that center, all take that contract into consideration. And so right now, outside of large capital expenditures like a roof replacement, you're covering the cost of your operations. If we were to, for that facility, if we were to look at doing something different, you would have to significantly rework your financial plan. You've had a long time standing policy that you're not going to use property tax revenue to offset the operations of that facility, with the exception of those large capital replacements, like a roof, for example. So that could be something that you may want to explore in the future, but I just want to let you all know that for our long-term financial plan, that that is all taken into consideration, the long-term contract that we have.
It isn't like we're making a ton of money off of them. If that's what you're thinking.
No, I'm not saying that we're making a ton of money on it, but it's, and I don't know how much the school likes the situation that it's in. I can't speak for them, but.
All right. Other,
I mean, I guess I would just have other comment, not a question, but I feel like with the council should look, or we should talk about at some point, right? Like the rec center you said is 20 years old, right? And I feel like we're kind of at that point where it either is what it is, or we need to take it to the next level, right? Like, I mean, lots of people will either go to Waconia, Chaska Community Center, Lifetime because they have pools, right? So I just think it's something that we have to think about in the future, because like I said, it's either going to be, it is what it is at some point. And I think with all the families coming in, right, we keep seeing more and more families as we grow, that it might be worth it, especially if we want to keep generating more, I guess.
maybe this is a good time to ask the question about our capital improvement plan on that building. Can you give us a little bit of a look out on it?
Sure. Several years ago, and I don't recall what year it was, maybe in the 15, 16 timeframe, we completed a facility assessment with cost estimates on the entire building, so roofs and doors and painting and windows. So we have that built into a plan, and then and what's the word for it? The extra money we have into the fund. Fund balance, thank you. So that is intended to cover some of those costs. So I think there's probably maybe $1 million.
Yeah,
But certainly over time, that will continue to.
Does that plan just look at maintenance, or does that look at any kind of an expansion?
Does not look at any kind of expansion. There was a facility assessment done that looked at the addition of office space and redoing the entryway and more community space. But that program was out several years based on the cost estimates. So.
Got it. Thank you.
Are there studies out there able to look like, like I said, places like Waconia, right? They're able to have birthday party, right? Like they have pretty big facilities, right? Like what that would, like, does it bring, obviously you'd be able to up your membership fees. Is that off, like eventually does that offset is that a money-making venture for those places eventually? Because, or is it basically?
And when you think about how many requests we get for the Lions Park Pavilion. Can we provide some other similar type of space so we've got some place to send people? Or is that kind of folly because we've got 4 hot weekends a year and you can't all be in all these places in 4 hot weekends a year? So, and the other thing that I think is really important to think about is, you know, we're not here to compete with the public sector. I mean, we're not here to compete with Lifetime. We're here to provide a service for our residents. And so I think we want to be careful about that as well. So, all the things to think about for sure.
Chaska has a pool. Community center. I mean, community centers usually have a pool.
Depending on the size.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
uber expensive. Yeah. All right. Any other questions for Ann? Otherwise, on deck, or up next, is Dave Shoger with our Public Works Department.
Sorry, I unplugged him.
Oh, this is what we were referring to, the black screen of death.
Well, you're welcome.
Yeah. And I'm sure Dave is skilled enough, he can just walk through his presentation without even the PowerPoint slides.
Sorry, Dave. I'm really sorry.
We'll get there. You're
It's
fine.
really crowded up here, too.
Well, good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for having us tonight. Quick overview of Public Works Department, which is Eric. And we'll go here.
There you go.
All right.
She's the fixer. Don't ever lose her.
Oh, look at that. There we go.
There we are.
Get out of here.
Well, a quick overview of the Public Works Department. So Public Works is made up of a staff, we have a staff of 10 people, full-time employees, 2 of which would be myself and Brady, kind of more on the administrative side, and then 8 full-time employees that are out in the field, supplemented by 5 seasonal staff members this year. We maintain all of the parks, sewer, water, streets, stormwater, snow removal, and all the general maintenance that goes throughout the city. Maintain 50 miles of road, 55 miles of sewer and water, as Ann mentioned, 32 active and passive parks that we're involved with, and as well as 34 miles of trails. Very busy. We have some pressures. So, increasing population and the high demand for water create the need for improvements and additions to our water treatment plant processes. We'll talk a little bit about that. Our growing community will continue to require additional staff and equipment. And this last couple of years of excessive heat have put a huge amount of stress and strain on not just our water system, but also a lot of our trees and parks. We're seeing a ton of die-off on the boulevard trees this year. Storms this last week haven't helped either, increasing some of those pressures on our staff to get some of that stuff cleaned up. But the trees have been a big pressure this year. We noticed quite a bit of stress in those trees last year after the drought season, and it just came to fruition this spring with the largest number of die-off that I've ever seen anyway. We've made some attempts and some changes in our development agreements that have shared and pushed some of those costs onto the developers, the homeowners, and the homeowners associations. But on all of our older developments, everything that kind of was built in 2015 and older, those boulevard trees are all owned and maintained by the city. So it requires a lot of work and upkeep and a lot of expense involved with replacing those trees. So we're working on finding some ways to get around that, but there's that. So
Can I ask a question on that?
yeah, absolutely.
Do we own, or does the city have, you know, the bags that you can put on the trees? I've never really seen them. Is that something that we've thought about?
We do. We have used them, deployed those a few times. We have a tanker truck that we can fill with water and that we get out a couple times a week for newly planted trees, and we'll water that way. And trees that we see that are stressed, we add water that way as well. So we try to get ahead of it, but you know, this year's been strange in that the maples, for some reason, which we have a lot of maple trees that have been planted on our boulevards, have really shown themselves to be very sensitive to the temperature swings that we've had and the dry weather that we've had, that, you know, their own had been used to plenty of water for all of their lives, and then all of a sudden you give them a couple of years of stress and they've failed. So it's actually been strange in that I hadn't ever recognized them as being so vulnerable to that. So there's that. Another large pressure, as I kind of mentioned earlier, is our water facilities and our production of water. We've talked about this before, and I'll just hit it again one more time. If we're looking at our off-peak season, wintertime, when we're pumping water out of our water treatment plant, 500,000 gallons a day is a pretty typical day. Anywhere from a little less to a little more than that would be a very average day. This summer, we've been producing 3.4 million gallons on average going out. So certainly you could extrapolate that and look at the reasons why. There might be simple things like snowbirds and things like that. The vast majority of that is due to irrigation. So we're seeing a lot of people that irrigate, a lot of people that like green lawns, and a lot of people that are pushing a lot of water out. We've been able to manage that fairly well this year. We haven't had a situation where we were, you know, in shock and scared and in a position where we needed to put a ban in place like we did last year. We've been successful in this, but the fact remains that that huge amount of water going out is putting a lot of pressure and a lot of strain on our equipment. So certainly is not, we'd be remiss not to be thinking about what this is going to take to continuously improve our plant and our production processes, as well as just replacement of the equipment we've got. So certainly going to be a lot of expenses coming forward, I'm sure. Working on a plan and trying to figure it out, working with Kara and engineering to figure out what those steps are going to look like. A couple of efficiencies that we found. There's probably a lot of them, but it feels like Public Works just spends money because we do. We're expensive. It is a lot of money going out because there's a lot of things that have to happen. We have a high level of service that we like to provide to our community, and we're happy to do so, just it's expensive. But a couple of things that we've worked on is with our potholing. Thankfully, our roads are in very good condition, and we've done a good job of maintaining and keeping them up and keeping up to date with them. But one of the cool things we found is infrared patching. So we rent this machine that goes out and it heats up the asphalt in areas that we're doing patching and work, potholing work, that actually incorporates that patch a little more deeply down so we don't have pothole failures. So it actually works pretty well, and it's thus far shown itself to be pretty effective. One of the things that Trish mentioned was one of the grants that was received by the county, from the county for the city, used for our compost waste site. It was, I believe Teddy worked hard on it and Trish worked hard on it as well to get this grant received. I believe it was $12,000 or was it $14,000?
That's about 13.
$13,000 in the middle. It's definitely helped offset a lot of those costs, and specifically, and it's going to be very helpful after this last storm that we had. We had a huge amount of storm debris up in our compost site. Going to help enable us to continue to keep that site open and keep the public able to use it, and specifically Public Works use it. We definitely need a good usage of that site for getting that storm debris removed. One of the things that we're working on, as I mentioned earlier, the tree stress that we've got. We've been talking about how in the world we can help mitigate some of those costs going forward, and one of the things that we're hoping to be able to use and we're trying to find and navigate the path to get this done is to use that Public Works lot. We've got about 10 acres of land. The Public Works site that used to be a tree farm, was Harmon Tree Farm. We have in the past, when those trees that were existing on that land of appropriate size, we're able to fade some of them out. Now we've just got a big lot that's open now. We'd like to move trees into that space and kind of have our own tree farm that can help reduce some of those costs of planting trees. There's a lot of probably hoops that we're going to need to jump through to figure out how to make that work exactly. One of them is going to be funding where those trees come from. We've got a couple ideas. One of them is occasionally when developments go in, they have a requirement for placing trees, and occasionally they get to the place where they finish their development and they may be short on trees that they've planted and they've got excess trees sitting around. We're trying to find ways to, one, either have them give us the money for that and purchase our own trees to plant. Two, maybe we just bank it and we don't do this at all. Or three, we actually have them plant those trees that are specifically identified for trees that were supposed to have gone into those developments and have them planted out on our yard behind the Public Works building. and then be able to use those to replace trees in the boulevards and other places that have unfortunately passed. One of the strange things that we found this year, one of the pressures that we found was, as I mentioned, these trees that are so expensive. In years past, they've been right around $450 to replace a tree is what it typically has cost. We searched and tried to find the best deal again this year, and the best we could find was averaging about $650 a tree. So it's one of those costs that goes up along with everything else. It's just difficult to find the availability and pricing that we've seen in the past. I guess I should talk back by that. Also, all of our budget pressures are kind of driven, kind of like everybody else, as Andrew had mentioned it as well. With inflation, everything's just gone up. Everything from obviously fuels and oils and things like that we use a lot of, to bathroom supplies, you know, the toilet paper and the paper towels and things like that. Everything has just gone up immensely this year. So I think we're going to continue to see that. Honestly, we need to plan for it and hope for finding maybe some relief in the future, but I don't see it anytime soon. So, and then last, we can talk about a couple highlights quick. As I mentioned, we've been really effective in making sure our plant has been operating well and efficiently. We've been able to get water out on a daily basis. We haven't run into any huge hiccups. A couple of things that we've been able to manage around. But we're working hard at keeping it going and making sure that we keep continuing to provide that clean water that everybody needs. We've introduced some very handy collaboration meetings with our engineering department. We meet our public works staff meets with usually one of the engineers nearly weekly to talk about developments that are happening, and it's actually helped very much with our plan review and catching a couple things here and there that maybe we wouldn't have seen in the past. So we've been very happy for that. And staffing. So one of the cool things that we've done this year is we've been able to bring in 5 seasonal staff. We've never brought in that many before. It's been very helpful for us to supplement our staff with that. Certainly doesn't replace full-time staff entirely, but it does definitely help a lot. We were very nervous this year as the hiring season began. We started our hiring process early this year thinking we'll be able to attract some potential candidates to come be seasonal staff with us, and we were just like at 1 for a very long time, and then out of nowhere at the end we ended up with 5 altogether, which has just been a blessing. So they've been a great addition to our staff. Really good group of guys to help us this year. We went to Chanhassen High School had a hiring fair, a job fair this year, and we went to that. And I think we were able to get one of our staff members came through that avenue, but we'll definitely go there again. It was pretty fun to see the kids and kind of tell them what we do and what they have some potential to do with us. And as I've spoken with our young staff that we've got in now, they're thrilled. They love what they're doing, and I think that we're going to have a good opportunity to get them back again. It's going to be really nice. So.
Great.
So, any questions?
Great. Council, questions for Dave? This is all very tangible stuff. Thank you, Dave. Jen, welcome to your first budget session here in Victoria.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. I am going to be presenting on the Community Development Department. So the Community Development Department promotes and maintains livable communities. So with that, that means we're planning for our future. We're focusing on high quality development, and we're ensuring a high quality of life. We also want to make sure that we're maintaining our vision of creating a vibrant, sustainable, and inclusive community that supports the social, cultural, and economic well-being of everyone in the community. So as you know, our department is small and mighty. The building department is committed to safely building and developing our city through our plan review, our permits and inspections. And then our planning department aspires to develop and grow the city through planning and zoning efforts. So we have a small staff I had mentioned, and you can see that the work that we do is quite busy on a daily basis and really depends on getting these developments approved. So as our community grows, there's going to be more demand and need to do that work, such as plan reviews, permit reviews, development reviews, ordinance revisions. Also, there's limited time for any strategic economic development initiatives, marketing, placemaking efforts, other programming such as DEI efforts, tourism, public art. Some of those programs don't get implemented when we're doing the day-to-day work, and those are things that we would like to make sure we're doing as our community development team grows and as the community grows. We're also looking at some potential legislative changes with the Housing First, looking into collecting adequate fees. There's some changes with housing regulations that we're seeing. And then also advancements in technology. We want to make sure that we're staying up to date with all of the technology that we have currently and making sure we're paying attention to any new technology that's coming on board with things such as online permits or inspections, things like that. We also want to make sure that we're focusing on providing excellent customer service. That is really what our department's all about. And we want to make sure that we're doing that in a courteous, timely, and professional manner. So cost saving and operational efficiencies. We can really utilize our department website to put project details on there. And that just really helps field those calls when someone's saying, hey, there's dirt being moved. What's going on? What is this project? Can you give me some information about that? Those calls take a lot of time throughout our days, going through every little detail. And depending on who calls and what information they want, sometimes we can't get that information to them right away and it gets lost in the shuffle. We can also use our online permitting software, which is definitely helpful for getting those processes completed. We can cross-train with other internal departments. So how can we work with communications? How can we work with building to get projects done quicker? How can we use the skill sets that we have internally in every department to get these projects completed? And then can we utilize possibly an intern? So what type of work can we give an intern to do that would help us in our day-to-day work? Can they do things such as researching ordinances? Can they look at what other communities are doing? Can they help with business retention and expansion visits? Things like that that will really help my department and the department as a whole to make sure that we are providing customer service in a timely manner. So some of the department highlights, as you know, we're redeveloping the city-owned 13.5 acres, so there's a lot of excitement around that. We're seeing a lot of movement on that project and a lot of calls on that parcel. There's an increase in housing and commercial development within the community. I've been here about 2 months, and I've really seen an increase on people wanting to build here, wanting to move their businesses here, which is excellent news. And then we have an opportunity to really share our story. We're not just a bedroom community. We have things to offer here. We're a community where you can live, work, and play. And that's something that we really want to make sure we are letting others know, and letting others know that Carver County is a great community to be in. It's a great place to have your business here, and we're growing. We're one of the fastest growing communities in Carver County. With that as well, we have roughly $200 million worth of active development in consideration. So that's really increasing our tax base. And with that means more staff needs. How do we make sure we're working with developers and people who want to build in our community to get these projects done timely so they don't walk away? That's one thing that we're really concerned about, is making sure that when someone submits an application, is everyone being treated fairly and equitable when those applications come in? And that's a focus of ours in our department. With that, I can take some questions.
Yeah, Councilmember Black.
What kind of businesses are calling in?
I can't give exact names, but a lot of
just
retail.
types.
Yep, we're seeing a lot of retail. Yep.
See, I told you.
Judy is on the record of being right.
And if I may, Councilmember Black, retail has really changed the last year. The state of retail as a whole has really changed. So when I say retail, I mean it's not just the small little boutique shops. It's the grocery stores. It's the entertainment type things. So as we really focus on retail, we have to figure out what that looks like for the future. And I know you support that.
I'm very excited about it. Yes, very much so.
Council, other questions for Jen? Great. We love being a place that people want to come and spend their money at. So both from a development standpoint and a consumer standpoint. So we want to remain our strong position in that area. Thank you, Jen. Ms. Guerin, welcome. Engineering. Oh, look at this spreadsheet. My goodness. Such an engineering thing to do. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor, members. Oh, that's hilarious.
That's, yeah.
It is a repeat
just
slide
add,
from
yikes.
last year. So this, I wanted to take this opportunity to highlight this slide again. It's the same slide I used last year, but it really highlights some of our collaboration and other ways that we look for efficiencies, really with our whole approach to providing engineering services to the city. So the council typically only sees me, but I have a whole team of people who work for Focus Engineering who interact with the city in different ways at different points in time, depending on the needs of the communities that Focus serves. But Jeremy from my team is a pretty big staple in the community. He's out in the field a lot. He works really closely with the planning department and the building department. In addition, we have our consultant services pool, and the firms within our pool that we use from year to year really varies depending on the needs of the community and what our areas of opportunity are for us to use their expertise that best serves. I did want to echo some of the hiring challenges that other departments have spoke to. We're seeing the same challenges in the engineering field. Typically in the summer, we have historically been able to have our pick of interns. So, however many interns you needed, you could get them. I went to a career fair earlier this year at the University of Minnesota, and what I learned was that the interns now have their pick of jobs. So a couple of young sophomores said to me, "Oh, I didn't even apply for an internship. They all just started calling me." So certainly a different market than what we've experienced in the past. So this summer we were able to use one of our consulting partners to help with some construction observation on the new development projects. WSB had a younger engineer that was available to assist. So we're tapping into those resources to find those opportunities for collaboration. I do also want to echo Dave's comment about the Public Works Engineering Collaboration Meeting. That's been a real increase in efficiency between the two departments. Historically, everybody just ended up calling each other and then trying to find a time to get together. Now they have a standing meeting. They don't necessarily meet every week if they don't need to, but it creates a good opportunity to have efficiency on the development side. Helps if I go forward. Budget pressures, I'm going to echo Dave's sentiment specifically related to the water system. I would be remiss to not highlight that here today. These weather conditions are fascinating. I had shared with some of the people on our water team some stats that some of you may have saw in the news recently towards the end of July before the fabulous rain over the last couple of days. 2022 was the fourth driest June and July combination in the past 100 years, and 2021 was number 7. The other years are spread out, they're sporadic. So what we're experiencing is a combination of these increasing 90-degree days. If you talk with the operations team for the water plant, the water usage peaks as the temperature increases. So the more 90-degree days we see, the more water use you have. Now we're also combining that with the severe drought conditions. So the pressure on the system is even greater this year than it was last year. And in the 20 years I've worked here, we haven't experienced back-to-back years where the system's under that kind of pressure. So I certainly can't predict the future, but it's something we all have a team in place that are working collaboratively on this issue, both from a technical perspective, an educational perspective, and a communications perspective. So lots happening there. In addition to that, because of all of our water use that's occurring for irrigation, we are exceeding the DNR's benchmark for what is considered where we need to be for water use. We are going to need an increase in our appropriation permit, so a permit from the DNR to pump water. So that's something that we're going to have to be dealing with in the next 12 months. And then, of course, we have lots and lots of new sod that needs water. So we've been having conversations about whether or not we should be changing some requirements around when new sod can be placed, as an example. And then, of course, as everybody else has commented on, there's a lot of fast, high growth and rising construction costs. So we'll be spending the next months continuing, as we do every year, but we will be doing it even more thoroughly this year, looking at what's in our long-range capital improvement plan for water infrastructure and looking at the timing and what we have in the budget for those different elements. And is that my last slide? No, highlight the South Area Utility Extension Project. So this one I just wanted to highlight because it really is a long-range project. Back in, I want to say 2002, 2003, the city identified a need to have trunk sanitary sewer facilities down at the intersection of 10 and 11, right as the Watermark development was going in. So we worked with the developer, put in a pretty significant sized sanitary sewer pipe under 81st Street, actually, that runs through the Watermark development, all to provide service to this south growth area. So here we are 20 years later, finally constructing a $4 million lift station that will serve the south and southwest part of the growing community. So really a long time project coming. That project has experienced significant delays due to supply chain issues. Originally, the lift station was supposed to be operational at the end of the year. Still not operational. The startup is scheduled for next week. People are moving into homes down there, so we really want to get that thing up and running and automated. But, you know, delays on various materials just kept creating those challenges. So even though it's a highlight, I guess I'll turn it back to a budget pressure. But with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Councilmember Black, please.
With the second water treatment plant planned for 2030, are we looking at moving that up?
Councilmember Black, that's one of the things that we as a group are meeting on. So we're looking at just operational changes to make sure that we're maximizing the existing infrastructure that we have, but then definitely looking at the timing of when that's needed. What's challenging with the water system projections is it really depends on how fast or slow the city's growing. So, you know, annually we're putting in a projection of what we think is reasonable based on historical growth. Generally working with the community development department to help us find what that right projection is. So I don't have the population served that we would need to hit off the top of my head before we need treatment plant number 2, but I'm also struck by the fact that it's almost 2023 and 2030 isn't that far away, and we're talking about a, you know, potentially a $20 million investment. So
right.
That is in the long-term financial plan, so it's in there, but if we have to start accelerating that, and as you know with the fire station, we'll start having to work on land in advance of that as well. So definitely something we'll be working on over the coming months.
Does that 20 million include land acquisition?
It is just a placeholder figure. I don't think so. Typically with this type of infrastructure, we're looking to see if we can negotiate the acquisition of land in conjunction with development. But depending on, you know, how things time out, that might not be an option.
Are there, sorry, I may be switching the topic, but staying on water, are there governors we can put on usage? Meaning we get to, let's just use 2.5 million gallons a day, and then it stops, it shuts off. We can't use it anymore, except for in the case of an emergency for trucks and things like that, to limit our exposure or any kind of kickback from the DNR saying that we can't do some things that we want to do?
So certainly the city has the authority to restrict water use. It's just not popular.
Right.
So that becomes the challenge for all cities that are going to face. You have a public that wants to have green lawns, feels that it's an unlimited resource that they should be able to use however, whenever they see fit. So that's where the challenge lies.
I mean, when large organizations that have irrigation systems are able to set up zones for watering throughout the week, right? They can select what zone. Are there systems out there for a city to be able to do that, saying to give the city the ability to manage that flooding, I would say, of lawns?
There isn't a specific set of infrastructure that could be created that would limit the amount of flow that could be distributed to any particular area. The system is actually sized for fire protection. So, you have to always have the ability to meet that fire flow expectation regardless of what water use is happening. That's partly what gets these guys so stressed, is to make sure that we do have the water available that we need to fight a fire in the event we should have one.
So we continue to use all of our communication channels available to us to communicate with our residents about water usage and watering their lawn, and maybe turning their sprinklers off, shortening that sprinkling time, turning them off for a couple of days, anything like that that helps, because it's pretty clear that we can manage, that our water usage is adequate, or our water is adequate during most of the year. And it's just during these high sprinkling seasons when everybody wants their lawn to be green. And so that's putting a lot of pressure on us, and to the point that the other council members have made, $20 million is a pretty high tax increase for us to build a new water treatment plant so we can all water our grass. So I would encourage us to continue to communicate those values of water conservation to our residents.
Yeah, Mayor, I do just want to echo that sentiment. We have adequate water to serve the population. It's the combination of the weather conditions that we've seen both this year in June and July, and June and July of last year, that's taxing the system so that people can have green lawns. And I drive around the community, and there are a number of lawns that you can see that are, letting them turn brown, given the weather conditions, which is great. There are a lot of people, doing their part, but we're still seeing really high usage. So as a group, we're looking at all of those things, whether it's looking for opportunities to implement capture reuse systems where we're using stormwater runoff for irrigation instead of treated groundwater.
Yeah, great. Thank you for that. Okay, other questions for our engineering? All right. Administration.
I'm going to disappear because I have another meeting that I need to walk into the room to present virtually on now. So.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Alyssa, now we're going over here. Alyssa, welcome.
Areas on you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor, Council, for having me here and allowing me to present on behalf of the Administration Department. I feel like every time I come back and present on this topic, our admin team gets a little bit bigger. So just to read them out loud, this team encompasses legal, IT, facilities, and the Office of the City Clerk. The team is responsible for the overall day-to-day operations of the city. It is responsible for carrying out the policies and directives of the City Council. And based on those two things, then it goes ahead and ensures that our organizational culture continues to be positive and that we're excelling in our service deliveries. For budget pressures, I'd be remiss to not mention that we are a growing community, and that does put strain on our department. The first one I want to mention is that maintaining of city facilities. Now, the City of Victoria, we pride ourselves on delivering the best possible services to our residents, and we realize that our staff are number one key to providing those excellent services to our community. This requires our facilities and where our staff work and where our equipment is housed to be in well-maintained operations and conditions. So what we've butted up against is budgetary constraints to properly conduct proactive maintenance on our city buildings. Proactive facility maintenance is a strategy that aims at identifying and then fixing points of failure before they happen. The goal for proactive maintenance is to increase asset reliability, reduce downtime, and hopefully anticipate possibly larger costs that might come up in the future so we don't have those unexpected expenditures, and we can plan those out within our capital improvements plan. The other thing I'd like to note on maintaining the city facilities is that we need to acknowledge that the price for fuel and product are increasing. This does impact our costs for contractual services such as janitorial work of our city facilities. And we have in this proposed 2023 budget for facilities added some inflationary costs to anticipate these increases. The next one I'd like to note is increasing staff levels. This has placed additional stress and added an increase in required software licenses, required equipment and tools that we need to ensure that our team, all the departments, are able to work efficiently and effectively. So as we add new staff members, as we start integrating and utilizing technology at its fullest, there are software licenses and other things that need to be procured for us to be able to use those tools.
Ms. Swanson, remind me, how many FTEs are we looking at to increase in '23?
Dana, can I, or Trish, would you answer that?
Yeah, so Mayor, members of the council, we're looking to add 5 positions.
5 FTEs. Okay, thank you. All right. Ms. Swanson, please.
Of course, Mayor. And then the last is growth has increased the cost to administer elections, which is done under the Office of the City Clerk. And just an FYI, we do have primary election day tomorrow, so go on and vote. But just an FYI, Minnesota elections are tied to a community's size, and as our city has seen significant growth in the last few years, and we've received the numbers back from the 2020 census, it has positioned us at needing additional precincts. In previous elections, we've only had 3 precincts with 3 polling locations. This year will be the first year we have 5 precincts with 4 polling locations. We chose to limit the number of polling locations from 5 to 4, just as precinct 5 is still quite small, and we were able to utilize the equipment and the tools and use those election judges to help decrease the cost of having an additional polling location for precinct 5. So the other way that this could possibly impact the budget is when we do start growing out our precinct 5 location, we will need to purchase voting machines, equipment, tools, and we will need to hire additional election judges to cover that area. The other thing to note is with the increase in population, there is a cost increase to the number of ballots that need to be printed, as well as any notifications that need to be sent out to each of the residents.
We have to pay for our ballots? We have
For
to
the
pay for
printing
our
of the ballots.
We have to pay for the printing of the ballots?
That is correct.
It doesn't provide that?
No.
So can you give us an estimate of what the cost is for the primary? Sardi, do you know the answer to that?
Don't have that number
All right.
in front of my head.
That's okay. I'm just curious. That's kind of a interesting FYI. All right.
And that is something we can look at, especially as the primary is tomorrow, getting that full-on picture once we understand how much time our election judges are putting in, and we'll be able to have a more accurate number. But I see Dana has a note.
Ms. Hardy.
Mayor, members of the council, it's just popped in my head. When we were talking last year's budget and we were not sure if we were going to appoint or hold an election, we did put aside $16,000 for that, which included the cost. A majority of that would be for including the cost of printing those ballots. So it's probably somewhere in that range, but I'll look up that number.
Okay, thank you. All right, Ms. Swanson, please.
Thank you, Mayor. For cost savings and operational efficiencies, so I have 2 things to note here. The first one is that in 2021, at the end of 2021, we have a newly dedicated facilities technician on our staff. That was through repurposing a public works position. Zach Peglow, our facilities tech, his position is dedicated to ensuring proper maintenance and proactive maintenance of our city facilities. He also oversees the ADA and OSHA requirements for all of our city staffed facilities. He conducts those proactive and predictive maintenance checks of our facilities and equipment. That includes weekly, monthly, seasonal walkarounds of our facilities, ensuring that our fire extinguishers work, smoke detectors, so on and so forth. And then he also assists with the LMC Insurance Trust for property and casualty renewals every year. He also looks at facility spending and has been researching ways that we can better, or looks for opportunities that we can have some cost savings. Specifically this year, he's taken a look at energy audits, ensuring that we are able to capitalize the best fuel for keeping the lights on for our city facilities. He's taken a look at solar initiatives and ways we could possibly incorporate into solar gardens or adding panels onto our roof structures. And then also adding new vendor partnerships and utilizing new vendors to hopefully conduct some of that proactive maintenance, but also provide a little bit more cheaper costs. And the next one for operational efficiencies is we've also added an IT manager position at the city. This was done in March of 2022 when we hired Eric Schutte as our first IT manager, which is our first full-time or FTE position within the city dedicated towards IT. This is a shift from previous external IT services. We still currently utilize a third party, Atomic Data, to help with some of those networking issues that we might have. If Eric ever wants to take a vacation, there's still somebody taking a look at our IT network and ensuring that everything is working properly. But Eric has really taken a good chunk of all of our help desk labor. He's worked on IT projects, starting to do equipment inventory, replacements, patch updates, etc. And just an FYI on cost, Atomic Data labor for last year, or I should say 2020, was $111,000, and just in the time that Eric's been here, their time has been less than $3,000. So it's been a significant decrease in the need to go for third-party IT. But cost aside, just having a person dedicated to our city that understands our network ins and outs has been a huge help to staff, making sure there's limited downtime. If they have an issue on a computer, they're able to immediately go to a city staff member instead of waiting for somebody to return a phone call or awaiting that third-party schedule. For any large projects, we're able to have him work with us right away instead of waiting a couple of weeks or months, depending on what Atomic Data's scheduling is. So he's been a very huge help cost-wise, but just operationally as well. There we go. And for highlights, what I would say that I'm most proud of this team is fostering a culture of strong cybersecurity best practices over this year. Together, what we've learned as a city staff is that cyber breaches start with attacking targets, targeting individual users. They send malicious links through our email accounts. They have fraudulent emails and attachments that are being sent to us continuously. And what those are attempting to do is having staff, anyone, download malicious content that can really put a huge disruption into the entire city network. What we've also learned through this year is that local government agencies are a common target of cyber attacks, with over 400 local governments being victim to ransomware since 2016. And that's approximately 66 cities per year that get hit with some sort of ransomware. Now, while cyber attacks are crippling to any particular user, the potential disruption it can have on cities is extremely, has an extreme serious consequence. It could potentially cost organizations millions of dollars in recovery efforts. It has unplanned downtimes that you are unsure when you're able to get back up and running. And then you just have that loss of confidence in the integrity of systems that handle basic services, thinking water, sewer, and emergency communications. So this is why it is so important for all of us to continue to be educated as a team, as a staff, on making sure you think before you click, and just some little tips to ensure that everything remains to be safe. Now, just for a little note on potential malicious emails that come into city, we did do an analysis last year. For one given month in 2021, we had 41,000 emails that came into the city, and about 30,000 of those did have malicious content in it. So about 11,000 were actual emails meant for city staff.
A lot.
It is. So in addition to keeping our tight grasps on kind of those physical aspects of security, we keep our firewalls updated, our systems updated. We ensure that our equipment is not nearing end of life. We're also training our staff team to be good stewards of cybersecurity. What that includes is, one, we conduct routine phishing testing to create an awareness of the most complicated malicious emails up to date. We've incorporated a phishing alert button to all of our city staff computers, making it easier for staff to report malicious content if it comes through, and then we can warn others about an email. We've locked down our devices by incorporating strong password requirements. We've incorporated multi-factor authentication this year. Any city-owned mobile device is now encrypted, so data on that machine will remain secure if ever stolen. We've also asked staff to attend regular cybersecurity training. I believe that's monthly. And then lastly, we've limited our geolocation scope. So where email traffic comes in, we've just limited that to safe locations throughout the United States and throughout the world. Now, while we understand we cannot fully defend ourselves from all these potential threats and potential attacks that might target cities, we do continuously educate ourselves on new threats that are coming online, new ways that hackers are trying to invade city systems. So we can put in measures in place beforehand and then hopefully limit ourselves and limit any sort of breach happening to our city network. So with that, Mayor, Council, I will pause here for any questions.
Questions, Council? Great.
Pretty thorough.
Yeah, we feel good about that. Yeah, for sure. That's one of the initiatives that we had taken on here in the last couple of years was to treat our technology as important as the rest of our infrastructure. So that's a good thing. All right, Finance and HR. We are now to Assistant City Manager Tricia Pollock. Trish.
Thank you, Mayor. I know we're getting close to our ending time, so if you allow, I could probably use about 15 minutes to get through this section and the fees and charges.
Yep, so if people are tuning in to watch the City Council meeting, we'll start that just a bit late. So, yeah.
So the Finance HR team is responsible for the financial operations and human resources operations of the city. We're responsible for carrying out the directives and policies of the council. We strive for customer service excellence, and we also focus on employee retention and engagement. So as the city continues to grow and the workload increases, we need to add staff to keep operating efficiently. So we expect to add 2 staff members in the next 2 years. With the addition of staff, we also look to add new technology to allow for more efficient processes. So also new this fall is the state mandated process for submitting your budget information to the county. So for the preliminary levy, the city's required to include certain budget information on a 1-page sheet of our prior and current projected budget. So that's also going to increase the mailing costs that we need to pay back to the county, and it will also increase staff time to prepare that information. So cost savings and operational efficiencies. So the check Intercept, we're in the process of implementing this. So with the move to monthly utility billing, it increases the amount of checks that we receive. So this third party will intercept the utility check payments when people write actual like manual checks or bill pay checks. and it uploads it into our financial software, resulting in decreased staff time and decreases in data entry errors. We're also working on our accounts payable. We've streamlined the process to reduce paper shuffling and misplaced invoices. Department heads are now entering in invoices directly into the system for review. And then we're also increasing the number of ACH vendor payments to some, especially to some of those vendors that we pay most often. This results on on-time payments, lowering payment processing costs, and more efficient payment processes. Staffing changes. So earlier this year, in June, Theodore Frid, our human resources and finance specialist, was promoted to the human resources manager position. He has taken on a much larger role in human resources, which has provided me more time to focus on more managerial duties and assisting the city manager. The HR departments played a huge role in creating a more cohesive and positive work culture. And he's also implemented a new applicant tracking software, has taken the lead on the newly implemented employee engagement and training activities. Our utility billing customer service technician has now become a shared position. It was vacated by Laura Foy after the birth of her son, but has now been transitioned into a father-daughter role. So she has come back to us on a part-time basis, and her father, who has years of finance experience, has joined her in this role. So it is now a shared position. We're so lucky to have both of them on our team. They're doing a great job. It really allows our resources to work effectively on employee engagement, and then also it allows that work-life balance that we strive to provide for our employees. So a couple of highlights. We completed the transition to 1 meter reading platforms.
Yay.
Yeah.
That was a couple of years in the making.
We have about 60 residents left on the census. So those accounts are being estimated until such time that we are able to get them to allow us into their home in order to make that meter change. So Laura and Dwight are working very hard on reaching out to those residents to get that.
Do we know where that where those residents are? What neighborhoods is that?
They're all over.
They're all over. It's not. It's not a.
Unfortunately, the census meters are our oldest meters, of course. So a lot of those accounts don't have emails and up-to-date phone numbers because they've just been in our system so long. Now when we have new residents, they provide us with all of that contact information. So it's just been harder because we have to contact them by mail and hope that they respond. So we're working towards it. And then also, as I mentioned previously, the applicant tracking software automates our hiring process. It was implemented in May by Teddy, and it saves him time to work on higher valued activities. So I'm just going to jump right into fees and charges unless you have questions about HR and finance.
Council, anything? Go ahead.
All right, moving right along. So our source of revenue, as you can see, this chart shows that property taxes makes 80% of that revenue. And even if we were to maximize all the fees possible, it still wouldn't be enough to have a significant impact on the property tax levy. Just a note, the 2% of all other sources are revenues such as grants or other aids that the city receives. So these fees and charges are reviewed by staff annually during the budget process, and they follow the criteria. The following criteria are considered during that process. So they look at market comparisons, fee set at upper quartile of the market, maximum set by external sources, which are fees that are set by legislation or the international billing codes, such as our building permit fees, cost recovery method, fees that will be self-supporting where possible. And then we do have a rate study and long-term plan for utility fees that we're going to talk about in more detail during our November budget workshop. So the proposed reduction in revenues, there's a couple. The commercial building permit fee budget, we're decreasing by 10,000 because we haven't been hitting the mark on what we've been budgeting for commercial building permit fees. They're very hard to predict. You could get one building permit for a commercial project that could be, you know, tens of thousands of dollars in 1 year, and then you won't get another one for another 3 or 4 years. So it's really hard to average those out like we do with the home permits. Plan check fee revenue, we're decreasing by 15,000 due to the master planning that we changed last year, where we are, when there's a master plan review for a house in a development where they do several of the same house, they'll review the master plan and then they have a less of a fee on the same home that they build or bring back for that same development. The park facility and activity fee revenue, however, is increasing by 15,000, which is great. We've seen, as Ann spoke earlier about, a very big increase in our park facility rentals and those activities after COVID. People are really getting out and wanting to do stuff.
So Trish, just to,
Yep.
I was going to say, just to be clear, those increases and decreases are due to quantities, not the actual fees.
Right, not the actual fees, it's just the amount of. So we're going to go into the actual fees that are changing on the next slide.
Okay, thank you.
So the proposed fee changes for the 2023 fee schedule, there's a few for fire, and most of those, or all of those, are to accommodate the 2023 wage increases. So most of that is the hourly, for the volunteer firefighters, paid on-call firefighters. And then the rec center, Ann had gone through and did a market study and was able to increase a few of those items to align more closely with our market cities. So affected are the shelter rentals and the gym rentals, birthday parties, private lessons in the gym, and then field setup at the ballparks. A couple other ones, the Pavilion rentals are increasing, and then the community gardens as well. In the building department, our building official, Scott McCarty, reviewed what permits should be adjusted, and those were all based on cost recovery. So wages would affect that, along with the time it takes to for the inspections and also for the permit review.
So is that an inspection fee, or
for which
for the building, re-roof, window, reside?
That's the cost of the permit, correct?
Yeah, so that's the cost of the permit. So if you were to re-roof, re-side, or re-window, currently for 2022, it's $75 for that permit. So that includes the inspectors to go out and inspect after the job has been completed. and he is proposing to increase that to $100.
So you have to get an inspection to get a new window?
So it depends. So I'm not in the building inspection like profession, but I believe it has to do with whether or not it's a window, like a full window replacement, or if you're just fixing a window.
Oh, okay.
We got a new door.
Because I just got
new
3
whole
busted
door and you
windows.
have to have an inspection.
It has to do with like what.
Making sure they flash it properly and all that kind of stuff. Okay.
Yeah. So if you were going to get a whole house full of windows, for example, I believe then that's what this permit would come into play.
Okay.
And then this, I'm not gonna go through these, I'm just gonna highlight, this is where all of our revenues are listed for services, fees for services. It shows the 3-year average, what we budgeted for 22, and then what I have put in the preliminary 2023 budget. So, for example, the liquor license 3-year average is a bit skewed because of the 2021 fees were given by council, so we couldn't really base it off a 3-year average. The fire sprinkler fees were reduced in 2022, and the year-to-date is 3,200, so the budget's been reduced to kind of reflect what we anticipate those revenues to be next year. And then the new building, plumbing, and mechanical permits, we are basing on 144 new homes, which is what we had budgeted for 2022 as well. Do you have any specific questions on any of these fees for services?
You know, can we, I would love to take a closer look at this.
Yeah.
Yeah, so can we kick this out to the council so we can take a look at it and then
Of course.
let them then take a closer look at it and see if we have questions?
Yeah, sure. I know there's a lot of information.
Yeah, Ms. Hardy, please.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. So just to make sure I'm understanding what the direction of the council is, are you wanting us to send you a snapshot of this so you can look at it closer via email? And then in your one-on-ones, you can bring me anything individually that we could bring back? Or are you wanting to kick this to another review at a workshop?
Can we, let's review it at a workshop.
We can do that.
Yes, please, thank you.
And then my final slide is just a snapshot of the utility franchise fees 10-year projection. So the projected average annual revenues is $340,000. Expenditures are $325,000, and excess revenues would be $15,000. So just to remind you, that's a 10-year projection. So that $15,000 comes more into play towards the later years because of the increase or projected increase in population. The current fund balance is just under $500,000. We're planning to use part of that fund balance to pay for the undergrounding of the Steiger Lake Lane West, which we haven't received a projected cost for that yet. So staff is not recommending an increase in utility franchise fees at this time.
Okay.
That is all I have. So if council would like to ask any questions about fees or charges, or I know you mentioned you want to talk more about those specific fees for services more in depth at the next workshop, which is fine. We'll bring that back.
Great. Council, other questions? Councilmember Black, do you have something?
Well, is there a way that we could have gotten this packet ahead of time so we could have not had to do another workshop?
Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor, Councilmember Black, members of the council. There's always a lot of work that staff puts into this information. There are a lot of moving parts and a lot of information that are coming in. As you know, the budget is very fluid at this time since we're still early in the process. So there are often things where we're refining and massaging things up until right before the workshop. We want to make sure we're presenting you the most up-to-date current information that we have. And so my concern with sending stuff out ahead of time is that if it's a presentation, a PowerPoint, as we've discussed before, doesn't have the context or the narrative with it, and it may create additional questions. And so we might not have all of the updated information until before, not necessarily when the packet goes out, the details with that, or things are updating very quickly at this stage in the process. So I don't want to give you incorrect information either and create additional confusion. So our past practice has been to provide as much information in the public report, in the agenda report as possible, but save the presentation. So we're working on that with the most up-to-date information as close to the workshop as possible. If it's the council's desire for us to include PowerPoint presentations, that means everybody's going to have to get their information to us sooner. We'll have to have earlier cutoff dates, and your information may not be as current.
How soon do you need an answer on this?
So we can study this and get back to it at the next workshop.
So Mayor, members of the council, I would just add again, this is a 6-month process. And so all of this information that we're presenting to you now is to give you a snapshot of how things are looking as we go into max tax. We're required by law to do that. We don't have good revenue projections for where we're at for this year. We don't have fiscal disparities numbers. There's a lot of information that is still unknown, which is why you have your maximum tax. You of course can't go, you can always come down from there. As we get more information, we get more refined. So the process is to try to start as big as possible and drill it down to something that's very realistic. And again, we just want to make sure that you have the most current and up-to-date information, which is changing very quickly at this stage in the game.
Yeah. So the fees could change even before we do the final tax?
Mayor, Councilmember Black, members of the council, yes, it's the fees are eventually adopted. Usually we do that in December. So you have a long time to make changes to that. If you're going to increase fees, there may be some finessing with the max tax amounts that we would have to look at to make sure that you don't exceed anything. But if you're decreasing fees, that of course may take some pressure off of your levy. Although again, this is where we talk about in our preliminary budget, the very, if you can recall visually, the piece of pie we show you where 80% of your revenue is in property tax dollars. So even if you did some significant changing to your fees and charges for service, it won't necessarily move the needle enough to impact your levy up or down. It may, but it also may not, just because it's such a small piece of the pie relative to the property tax. But this is something that we very early on, the staff, the team of people that you're here today, they have gone through to their departments. They have taken a deep dive into all of these areas. And as Trish noted, there are things that we're looking at. We're looking at, is something set by statute? Is something in the market? Are we going to be upper quartile? And so there's certain things that we're looking at as we go through and do those deep dives. We've done we have our market cities. We look at our market comparisons. And so staff have spent several months looking. This is one of the very first things we start doing in May every year to start gathering that information. And there's lots of dialogue between cities and all the different list groups, listservs that we're all a part of, where we're having dialogue on what those fees and charges look like. And then we bring this to you as part of this discussion. We want to do it early because we want you to be thinking of all those things as we go into max tax, but we still have a lot of flexibility and time to make changes because you're not adopting the fee ordinance typically until December.
Okay, so we have time. Okay.
Okay. Council, other questions, comments?
I did have one question.
Councilmember Hebert.
Just for my clarification, Trish, on the meters, did you say that we're estimating fees for a portion of meters that haven't been replaced?
Yeah, Councilmember Hebert, members of the council. So because it would be a lot of extra work now at this point to run a whole nother system to pick up the 60 meters. Like if they were all in one neighborhood, it would be fairly easy to do that, but because they're scattered and we would have to still drive the route, we have sent letters to those residents and told them that their water usage will be estimated until the time that they get their water meter replaced. Now, when the water meter gets replaced, it's still been recording water usage, so at that time we will catch up. So if we overestimate, then we will credit them back what we overbilled, and if we underestimate, we will bill them at that time off of the actual usage of the meter.
Well,
so the meter's still operating, it's just we're not reading it.
Okay, so there's a true up.
Yeah, and
method.
so I'll take an average of their usage from the previous couple of years at the same time frame, so we get it as close as possible. It's usually fairly close.
Okay, thank you.
All right, council, any last thoughts? All right, terrific. With that, there are no more items to come before us this evening at the workshop, so I will take a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
I have a motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned. We'll have about 5 minutes to turn the camera and then we'll convene for